They called me the silent son, the broken heir of a titan, hidden away in a mansion built on lies. But my silence wasn't a weakness. It was a loaded gun, waiting for the perfect moment to fire. For the first 29 years of my life, I mastered the language of silence. It was a language spoken in the vast empty halls of my father's mansion, a sprawling estate that felt more like a museum than a home. Every surface gleamed, every corner was dusted, but the air itself was thick with things unsaid. My father, Alistair Covington, was a man who built an empire from silicon and code, a titan of industry whose voice could move markets. But to me, his only son, he offered nothing but a dismissive glance and the hollow echo of his footsteps on marble floors. To the world, and to him, I was the broken heir, the 30-year-old man-child who, since a shattering event in my childhood, refused to speak. They saw a ghost haunting the West Wing, a failure tucked away from public view. Doctors had names for it: selective mutism, post-traumatic stress. My father had his own name for it: a disappointment. He communicated with me through his assistant, via curt emails left open on the tablet in my suite. Your monthly allowance has been deposited. Do not attend the charity gala on Thursday. Your presence is not required. But they were wrong. I wasn't silent. I just only spoke to one person: Elena. Elena was my sanctuary. She had been a maid in this house since before I was born. Her hair was now streaked with silver, and her hands, though wrinkled, were the only source of warmth I had ever known. She wasn't just staff. She was my memory, my voice, my anchor to a world that had long since decided I wasn't worth listening to. Our conversations were a quiet ritual. Every morning she would bring my coffee, not the bitter black swill my father drank, but a latte with a perfect foam heart on top. She'd set it on my desk, her movements gentle, and I would look up from the financial reports I spent my days analyzing. Yes, the silent son was secretly a damn good investor, turning my allowance into a small fortune my father knew nothing about. "Good morning, Leo," she would say, her voice a soft melody that cut through the oppressive quiet. And I would reply, my voice raspy from disuse, but clear: "Good morning, Elena. Did you sleep well?" We'd talk for hours. I'd tell her about the stocks I was watching, about the books I'd read, about the suffocating weight of my father's disapproval. She would tell me about her grandchildren, about the stubborn rosebush in the East Garden, about memories of the house when it was filled with something other than polished silence. She was the only person who saw me, the man behind the myth of the broken boy. She never pushed, never prodded about the day my world went quiet. She just listened. But lately I'd noticed a change in her, a shadow in her eyes that wasn't there before, a hesitation in her hands. It started a few months ago, when the preparations for my father's 60th birthday party began. This wasn't just any party. It was a coronation. He was stepping down as CEO of Covington Corp. And was going to announce his successor. Everyone knew it wouldn't be me. The frontrunner was my cousin, a slick, soulless corporate shark named Marcus, who mirrored my father in every way. The tension in the house was palpable. Staff scurried, event planners barked orders, and my father's presence became an oppressive, suffocating force. He saw me in the library one afternoon and didn't even flinch, just stared right through me as if I were another piece of expensive, useless furniture. That was the day Eleanor's hands started to tremble. The day before the party, she came into my room. Not with coffee, but with a look of grim resolve on her face. She closed the heavy oak door behind her, the click echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. She didn't say a word, just walked over to my bookshelf where a single framed photograph sat. It was the only picture I had of my mother. A beautiful woman with a radiant smile and eyes the same color as mine. The official story was that she left us when I was 5, packed her bags and walked away from the money, the prestige, and her silent, broken son. Elena picked up the photo, her thumb gently tracing my mother's face. I saw a tear roll down her cheek and splash onto the glass. "Leo," she began, her voice barely a whisper, strained with a weight I had never heard before. "Tomorrow night, at the party, your father isn't just going to announce Marcus as his heir." I stayed quiet, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. I knew this. It was an inevitability I had long accepted. She turned to face me, her eyes boring into mine, filled with 2 decades of secrets and sorrow. "He's doing it because he thinks you're weak. He thinks you're silent because you're broken." She took a shaky breath, her knuckles white as she gripped the photo frame. "He's not afraid of what you won't say, Leo. He's terrified of what you might remember." A cold dread, sharp and familiar, snaked its way up my spine. The fractured memories, the nightmares of shouting and broken glass, the scent of rain on concrete. They all swirled in my mind. Eleanor's voice dropped, becoming a fierce, trembling whisper that cracked the foundation of my entire life. The story he told you, the story everyone knows about your mother leaving. It's a lie. I was there that night, Leo. I saw everything. The world tilted. The air in my gilded cage, already thin, was suddenly sucked out. A lie. My entire life, the narrative that had defined me, was built on a lie. The photograph in Elena's hand seemed to burn, the image of my mother's smile twisting into a question I'd been too afraid to ask for 25 years. My voice, when it finally came, was a ragged tear in the fabric of silence. "What lie?" I croaked, the words scraping my throat. "Eleanor, what did you see?" She flinched, her eyes darting towards the door as if my father's ghost might materialize from the polished wood. "Oh, Leo," she breathed, setting the photo down with a trembling hand. "He will destroy me for this. He made us all swear, threatened us, our jobs, our families." She wrung her hands, the gesture so full of anguish it made my chest ache. "But I made a promise to her, to your mother. I promised I would watch over you." She took a deep, steadying breath and began to speak. The story didn't come out in a flood, but in fractured pieces, like the memories that haunted my own sleep. It was the night of a terrible thunderstorm, rain lashing against the windows, the wind howling like a grieving animal. I was 5 years old, and I'd woken up from a nightmare. The sounds of shouting had drawn me from my bed. Not the low, angry rumble of a typical argument, but something sharper, more desperate. "It wasn't about another woman, Leo," Eleanor said, her eyes distant, lost in the past. "Your mother, Isabella, she was brilliant. As brilliant as your father, maybe more. She helped him in the early days, managed the books, the strategy. She found something, an inconsistency, a secret he had buried at the very foundation of Covington Corp. My blood ran cold. I always assumed my mother was just a beautiful socialite, a trophy wife. I never knew she was involved in the business." "She found proof," Elena continued, her voice dropping lower, as if the walls themselves were listening. "Proof that the original algorithm, the one that made your father a billionaire, wasn't his. It belonged to his first partner, a man named David Chen, a man who died in a car crash just weeks before the company went public." A memory sparked in the darkness of my mind. Not a picture, but a feeling. The feeling of my mother's hand gripping mine, her skin cold with fear. "She confronted him that night," Elena whispered. "I was in the hall, clearing a dinner tray. I heard her voice, clear as a bell, even over the storm. 'I will not let my son be raised by a fraud and a thief, Alistair. I'm taking Leo, and I am going to the press.' The room spun. I grabbed the edge of my desk to steady myself. The fragmented nightmare I'd had for years began to coalesce into a coherent, horrifying picture. The shouting, the scent of rain, a vase of white lilies shattered on the marble floor. "I heard the sound of breaking glass," Eleanor said, her words mirroring my own nascent memory. "Then I heard him roar, like nothing I'd ever heard before. It wasn't human. I ran and hid in the linen closet. I was so scared." Her face crumpled. "Then I heard her scream. Just once. A short, sharp sound. And then silence. The silence. That's what I remembered most. The awful, deafening silence that followed the storm. The silence that had swallowed my own voice." "The next morning," Eleanor said, her voice thick with tears, "he called all the staff to the main hall. He looked calm, collected. He told us Isabella had a breakdown, that she'd packed a bag in the middle of the night and left. He said she'd abandoned her son. He warned us that if anyone ever spoke a different story, he would ensure we never worked again, that we would lose everything." I squeezed my eyes shut, a single hot tear tracing a path down my cheek. I wasn't just a witness from the hallway. I was there. A flash of memory, clearer than any before, ripped through me. My mother, kneeling in front of me, her red dress like a slash of blood in the dimly lit corridor. Her hands are on my shoulders, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes fierce. "Listen to me, Leo." Her voice echoed in my head. "No matter what he tells you, you remember that Mama loves you. Be a brave boy for me. Can you be brave?" "He lied," I whispered, the words tasting like poison. "He lied about everything." "Yes," Elena affirmed, her gaze hardening with a resolve I'd never seen. "He built an empire on one lie and protected it with another. But your mother was smarter than him. She knew he would try to erase her. She knew he would control the story." She stepped closer, her hand reaching out to grip my arm, her touch grounding me in the dizzying reality. "She didn't just leave you, Leo. She left you the truth." My head snapped up, my eyes locking with hers. "What do you mean?" Eleanor's voice was a blade, sharp and clear. "Before she confronted him, she hid something for you. A small, leather-bound journal. It has everything, Leo. Her notes, copies of the original documents, the proof of what your father did to David Chen. It's the one thing that can tear his whole world down. She took one final shaky breath, her eyes flicking towards the long, dark corridor of the West Wing. He never found it. He searched for weeks, but he never thought to look in the one place that was truly yours. She hid it inside the one thing he couldn't bring himself to throw away. My mind raced, a whirlwind of confusion and dawning horror. The one place that was truly mine? In this house, nothing felt like mine. It was all his, the art, the furniture, the very air I breathed. What possession, what relic of my childhood, had been so sacrosanct that even my father, in his ruthless purge of my mother's memory, couldn't bear to discard it? My eyes scanned my suite, the sterile, minimalist space designed by my father's decorator. Books, a laptop, a photo frame. Nothing felt significant enough. Nothing held that kind of history. "What is it, Elena?" I asked, my voice urgent. "Where is it?" The toy chest," she said, her words unlocking a door in my memory I hadn't opened in 25 years. "The old wooden one in the attic. The one with the hand-painted animals on the lid. Your mother painted it for you herself." The image flooded my mind. The heavy oak chest, the slightly chipped paint on the lion's nose, the secret compartment in the base where I used to hide my favorite marbles. My father had ordered my childhood bedroom stripped bare, after my mother left. He'd called the toys and furniture painful reminders, but the chest... I faintly remembered him standing in the doorway, his face a mask of stone, telling the movers to just put it in the attic. "Leave it," he'd grunted. I had assumed it was an oversight, a rare crack in his monolithic cruelty. Now I understood. It was a monument to his last shred of humanity, or perhaps a trophy of his victory. "Tomorrow night," Elena continued, her tone shifting from sorrowful to strategic. "During the party, the house will be chaos. Security will be focused on the guests, on the grounds. Your father and Marcus will be on the main stage, basking in their glory. That will be your chance." The plan was audacious. Terrifying. For my entire life, I had moved through this house as a ghost, my defining characteristic, my invisibility. Now, Elena was asking me to perform the biggest heist of my life in the middle of the year's most high-profile social event. "What do you want me to do with it?" I asked, the weight of the journal, a book I hadn't even touched, settling on my shoulders. "Your mother had a lawyer," Elena said, pulling a small folded piece of paper from her apron pocket. It was old, the creases soft with age. An old friend from law school she trusted completely. His name is Benjamin Carter. This is his number. Your mother told me, if anything happens to me, give this to Leo when he's old enough to understand. I think you're old enough now, Leo. I took the paper. The name Benjamin Carter meant nothing to me, but to my mother it had meant safety. It meant truth. The rest of the day was a blur. I pretended to read my financial reports, but the words were just black squiggles on a white screen. My mind was in the attic, with a painted lion and a leather-bound journal. The silence of the house no longer felt oppressive. It felt charged, like the air before a lightning strike. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant chime of a clock, was a countdown to a moment that would either liberate me or destroy me. The evening of the party arrived. The grounds were transformed. Strings of lights were draped through the ancient oaks. A massive marquee had been erected on the lawn, and the sound of a string quartet drifted up to my window. Cars, sleek and black, crunched up the gravel driveway, depositing men in tuxedos and women in glittering gowns. My father's kingdom was on full display. I dressed not in the suit laid out for me, but in a simple black turtleneck and dark trousers, the uniform of a shadow. I watched from my window as my father took the stage with Marcus at his side. He was a king surveying his subjects, his arm draped possessively over my cousin's shoulder. Marcus smirked, soaking in the applause, the perfect heir to a stolen throne. The sight filled me with a cold, clear rage that burned away the last vestiges of my fear. I slipped out of my room. The West Wing was deserted, as Elena had predicted. The staff were all busy serving champagne and canapés to the corporate elite. My footsteps were silent on the plush runners as I made my way to the servants' staircase, the hidden artery of the mansion. The door to the attic was at the end of a long, dusty hallway on the third floor. It was locked, of course, a simple, old-fashioned lock my father hadn't bothered to upgrade. Using a thin metal card from my wallet, a trick I'd learned from a security analysis book, I slid it into the jamb. A quiet click, and the door swung open into darkness. The air was thick with the scent of old wood, dust, and forgotten time. A single bare bulb cast long, distorted shadows across mounds of shrouded furniture, ghosts of a past life. And there, in the far corner, was the toy chest. It was smaller than I remembered, but the painted animals were just as vibrant. The lion, the giraffe, the monkey. My mother's love, immortalized in paint. My heart hammered against my ribs as I knelt before it, my hands tracing the familiar shapes. I lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled amongst a few faded teddy bears and a set of wooden blocks, was nothing. My stomach dropped. Had he found it? Had this all been for nothing? Then I remembered. The secret compartment. I ran my fingers along the bottom, searching for the small, almost invisible notch in the wood. My finger found it. I pressed, and a section of the floor popped up with a soft click. And there it was. A small journal, bound in dark red leather, tied shut with a faded ribbon. My mother's journal. My hands trembled as I lifted it. It felt impossibly heavy. A vessel containing the truth of a life stolen. A future erased. I untied the ribbon and opened it to the first page. Her handwriting was elegant, precise, a stark contrast to the chaos of her words. "My dearest Leo," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I have failed. It means Alistair has won, and I am gone. Do not mourn me. Avenge me. The proof you need is in these pages. But know this. Stealing his company is not what will destroy him. There is another secret, one he has guarded even more closely than the fraud. A secret about you." I froze, the fine hairs on my arms standing on end. A secret about me? I frantically flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning past financial ledgers, timelines, and copies of legal documents. I landed on the final entry, dated the night of the storm. The handwriting was frantic, words scrawled across the page. "A key. He knows I'm going to leave. He's cornered. He just screamed at me that I would never take you, that you are his blood, his legacy, and that he'd rather see you broken than let you leave with me. But that's the biggest lie of all. He has no right to you. You are not his legacy. Because Alistair Covington is not your father." The words on the page didn't just shock me. They detonated the very foundation of my identity. Alistair Covington. The man whose cold disapproval had been the defining force of my life. The architect of my silent prison was not my father. A strange, disorienting wave of relief washed over me, immediately followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated fury. The cruelty, the neglect, the dismissal. It wasn't the disappointment of a father in his son. It was the resentment of a fraud towards the living embodiment of his wife's ultimate betrayal. My mother's last entry was a desperate scrawl. "Your father is David Chen, the man he destroyed. He was my first love, my only love. Alistair found out after we were married. He knows, Leo. He's always known you weren't his." Everything clicked into place. The coldness, the way he looked through me, the reason he kept me locked away but never completely cast me out. I wasn't just a broken heir. I was a living reminder of his victim, the son of the man whose genius he had stolen. Keeping me here, silent and under his thumb, was the ultimate act of dominance, a final, twisted victory over his dead partner. Clutching the journal to my chest, I descended from the attic, no longer a ghost, but a revenant. The music from the party below seemed to mock me, a celebration of lies built on the bones of my real father. I walked not to my room, but towards the grand staircase, the journal tucked securely inside my jacket. Each step was deliberate, a drumbeat marking the end of an era. As I reached the top of the marble staircase, I could see the whole scene below me, the sea of champagne glasses and fake smiles. And on the stage, my father Alistair was at the podium, his arm around Marcus. The spotlight illuminated them, casting the rest of the world into shadow. "And so," Alistair's voice boomed through the speakers, dripping with false humility, "it is with immense pride that I pass the torch of Covington Corp to a young man who embodies the same spirit of innovation and integrity that I founded this company on. My nephew, my successor, Marcus Covington." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus stepped forward, his face glowing with smug triumph. This was his moment. This was the lie solidifying into history. And that's when I chose to speak. My first word wasn't a shout. It was quiet, amplified by the microphone I'd snatched from a nearby lectern intended for opening remarks. "Fraud." The single word cut through the applause like a shard of glass. 100 heads turned, then 1,000. The music faltered. The room fell into a stunned, absolute silence. All eyes were on me, the silent son, standing at the top of the stairs. I saw Alistair's face. For the first time in my life, I saw something other than indifference in his eyes. I saw pure, unadulterated fear. "That spirit of innovation you speak of," I said, my voice steady, amplified, filling the cavernous space. It felt liberating, like a dam breaking after decades of pressure. "Did it belong to you, Alistair, or did it belong to David Chen?" A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Alistair's face went white. Marcus looked from me to his uncle, confusion warring with anger on his face. "Leo, what is the meaning of this?" Alistair hissed into his own microphone, his voice dangerously low. "Security, remove him." But no one moved. They were all captivated. The myth was speaking. "David Chen," I continued, walking slowly down the stairs, each step an earthquake under Alistair's feet. "Your partner. The man whose algorithm you stole to build this empire. The man who died so conveniently just before the IPO. I held up the leather-bound journal. "My mother, Isabella, didn't abandon me. She was going to expose you. She kept meticulous records of your theft." I looked out at the sea of powerful faces, the board members, the investors, the journalists. "She kept the proof, and she left it for me." Alistair was trembling now, his mask of control shattering. "These are the insane ramblings of a disturbed young man. He hasn't spoken in 25 years. He's unwell." "I was silent because of you," I roared, the raw power in my voice shocking even myself. "I was silent because as a 5-year-old boy, I watched you silence my mother permanently when she threatened to reveal the truth. I was silent because your lie was so monstrous. It stole my voice." I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked directly towards the stage. I felt a hand on my arm and turned to see Elena standing there, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes shining with pride. She nodded, giving my arm a squeeze. She wasn't afraid anymore. I turned back to Alistair. "But you made one mistake. You kept me here. You let me grow up in the heart of your kingdom of lies. And you forgot the most important secret of all, didn't you?" I paused, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air. The secret my mother documented on the very last page of this journal. I looked directly into his terrified eyes. "You kept me so close because you were terrified of what the world would think if you abandoned the son of your dead wife. But I am not your son. My father was David Chen. You haven't just been living off a stolen legacy. You've been holding the rightful heir captive your entire life." The explosion in the room was instantaneous. The cameras flashed, reporters were shouting, and the carefully constructed world of Alistair Covington imploded. Marcus stared at me, his face a perfect picture of dawning horror as he realized his inheritance was built on sand. The rest is history now, chronicled in headlines and court documents. The journal was irrefutable. Benjamin Carter, my mother's lawyer, materialized like a guardian angel, and together we brought down the house of cards. Alistair was ruined, not just financially, but publicly, his name becoming a synonym for corporate villainy. The company was restructured, the board purged. Using the fortune I had quietly built, and with the backing of key investors who valued truth over loyalty to a tyrant, I made a bid. Today I am the CEO of Chen Corp. We restored my true father's name and legacy. I made Elena a primary shareholder, and she now lives in a beautiful house by the sea, finally free. The mansion was sold, its silent halls exorcised of their ghosts. I still speak quietly, thoughtfully. I don't think I'll ever be a man of many words. But when I do speak, it is with the weight of truth. I am no longer the silent son. I am the voice my parents never had, and I will make sure it is never silenced again.